Hello friends. Welcome to another story time. We are reading another chapter of this Goosebump book. I want to remind classrooms that this chapter book is intended for older grades. So I would say grade 4 and up. But I mean, hey, all the teachers out there know of Goosebumps, so it's totally up to your discretion. All right, let's get started. We left off at a cliffhanger. I'll read that part back and then we'll jump into the second chapter. Greg hesitated and stared up at the house. A cold chill ran down his back. Before he could reply, a dark form leapt from the shadows of a tall weeds and attacked him. Greg toppled backwards onto the ground. "Ah!" he screamed. Then he realized the others were laughing. "It's that dumb Cocker Spaniel!" Sherry cried. "He followed us." "Go home, dog, go home!" Bird shooed the dog away. The dog trotted to the curb, turned around, and stared back at them, its stubby tail wagging furiously. Feeling embarrassed that he'd become so frightened, Greg slowly pulled himself to his feet, expecting his friends to give him grief. But they were staring up at the Kaufman house thoughtfully. "Yeah, Michael's right," Bird said, slapping Michael hard on the back, so hard Michael winced and turned to slug Bird. "Let's see what it's like in there." "No way," Greg said, hanging back. "I mean, the place is kind of creepy, don't you think?" "So?" Sherry challenged him, joining Michael and Bird, who repeated the question. So, I don't know," Greg replied. He didn't like being the sensible one of the group. Everyone always made fun of him for being the sensible one. He'd rather be the wild and crazy one. But somehow, he always ended up sensible. "I don't think we should go in there," he said, staring up at the neglected old house. "Are you a chicken?" Bird asked. "Chicken!" Michael joined in. Bird began to cluck loudly, tucking his hands into his armpits and flapping his arms. With his beady eyes and beaky nose, he looked just like a chicken. Greg didn't want to laugh, but he couldn't help it. Bird always made him laugh. The clucking and flapping seemed to end the discussion. They were standing at the foot of the broken concrete steps that led up to the screened porch. "Look, the window next to the front door is broken," Sherry said. "We can just reach in and open the door." "This is cool," Michael said enthusiastically. "Are we really doing this?" Greg, being the sensible one, had asked. "I mean, what about Spidey?" Spidey was a weird-looking man of 50 or 60 they'd all seen lurking about town. He dressed entirely in black and crept along on long, slender legs. He looked like a black spider, so all the kids called him Spidey. Most likely, he was a homeless guy. No one really knew anything about him, where he'd come from, where he lived, but a lot of kids had seen him hanging around the Kaufman house. "Maybe Spidey doesn't like visitors," Greg warned. But Sherry was already reaching in through the broken window pane to unlock the front door. And after little effort, she turned the brass knob and the heavy wooden door swung open. One by one, they stepped into the front entryway, Greg reluctantly bringing up the rear. It was dark inside the house. Only narrow beams of sunlight managed to trickle down through the heavy trees in front, creating pale circles of light on the worn brown carpet at their feet. The floorboards squeaked as Greg and his friends made their way past the living room, which was bare except for a couple of overturned grocery store cartons against the wall. "Spidey's furniture?" Greg wondered. The living room carpet, as threadbare as the one in the entranceway, had a dark oval stain in the center of it. Greg and Bird stopped in the doorway, both noticing it at the same time. "Think it's blood?" Bird asked, his tiny eyes lighting up in excitement. Greg felt a chill on the back of his neck. "Probably ketchup," he replied. Bird laughed and slapped him hard on the back. Sherry and Michael were exploring the kitchen. They were staring at the dust-covered kitchen counter as Greg stepped up behind them. He saw immediately what had captured their attention. 2 fat gray mice were standing on the countertop staring back at them. "They're cute," Sherry said. "They look just like cartoon mice." The sound of her voice made the 2 rodents scamper along the counter, around the sink, and out of sight. "They're gross," Michael said, making a disgusted face. "I think they were rats, not mice." "Rats have long tails, mice don't," Greg told him. "They were definitely rats," Bird muttered, pushing past them into the hallway. He disappeared towards the front of the house. Sherry reached up and pulled open a cabinet over the counter. Empty. "I guess Spidey never uses the kitchen," she says. "Well, I didn't think he was a gourmet chef," Greg joked. He followed her into the long, narrow dining room, as bare and dusty as the other rooms. A low chandelier still hung from the ceiling, so brown with caked dust it was impossible to tell that it was glass. "Looks like a haunted house," Greg said softly. "Boo!" Sherry replied. "There's not much to see in here," Greg complained, following her back into the dark hallway, "unless you get a thrill from dust balls." Suddenly, a loud crack made him jump. Sherry laughed and squeezed his shoulder. "What was that?" he cried, unable to stifle his fear. "Old houses do things like that," she said. "They make noises for no reason at all." "I think we should leave," Greg insisted, embarrassed again that he'd acted so frightened. "I mean, it's boring in here." "It's kind of exciting being somewhere we're not supposed to be," Sherry said, peeking into a dark, empty room. Probably a den or study at one time. "I guess," Greg replied uncertainly. They bumped into Michael. "Where's Bird?" Greg asked. "I think he went down into the basement," Michael replied. "Huh? The basement?" Michael pointed to an open door at the right of the hallway. "The stairs are there." The 3 of them made their way to the top of the stairs. They peered down into the darkness. "Bird!" From somewhere deep in the basement, his voice floated up to them in a horrified scream. "Help! It's got me! Somebody please help! It's got me!" And that's the end of chapter 2. All right, guys, I will see you next time for chapter 3. I hope you're enjoying this as much as I am. All right, bye.